Hello and welcome to Global Conversations, served with a side of strategy. I'm Dr. John Palabiyik, and today we are serving up a deep dive into tariffs, trade wars, and where globalization might be heading next. As someone who views the world through the lens of international hospitality and tourism, I believe that even the most complex issues like trade policy can be better understood and better approached the hospitality way by putting people in the center of creating meaningful moments that help turn the world into a place worth living. Joining me is my colleague and fellow global thinker, Dr. Jorge Riveras, a professor of strategy and international business and former global executive with deep expertise in sales, marketing, and economic integration. Let's get into it. Dr. Jorge Riveras, let's start at the beginning. What exactly is a tariff and why are they suddenly became in the back headlines?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to talk to the audience today and to talk to you. Tariffs has become a very big issue these days, and tariffs. The way to easy way to explain a tariff is a duty, is a tax, is a payment that you have to pay when you are importing and in some cases exporting goods or services. Okay. But tariffs are more complex in the sense of what you use it, how you use it, and it's connected to different things. It's connected to obviously international trade, economic integration that can be regional or global. It's connected to the harmonized code that have been applied for these products, and is connected to arguments for government intervention. So let's start with the arguments. A government can have arguments that could be political or economic or why they say let's intervene in free trade. Free trade means that there's no intervention. So when a government intervenes, it could say, well, for economic reasons or political reasons, we're going to intervene because we want to protect jobs of our citizens, or because someone is producing something that is risky for the use of the public. Or for any other reasons. In the particular case of tariffs, they're putting tariffs to try to put a barrier on some of the products because some may consider that another tool like subsidies have been used by another government, and that is giving them an advantage that is an unfair advantage, and that's the reason why they put tariffs. Now, the next topic related to tariffs is the harmonized codes. So there's a global custom organization that basically creates these codes that are usually 6-digit codes that are applied to a particular item. I still remember from my old days working in global business, like my product, I was in the analytical instrumentation business, the 90-27-30-10, that was the code for spectrometers. And that meant that the description of an analytical instrument is put on that book that people that works in customs revise, and with the declaration of the product when it's arrived, and they say, okay, this product will pay 5% tax or 5% tariffs when it's imported. So different products have different levels of tariffs. So how do we connect that with economic integration? There are different levels of economic integration. The lowest level of economic integration is a free trade agreement. That's what we had with NAFTA or the new version USMCA between among Canada, United States, and Mexico. In a free trade agreement, you don't pay for products that are imported. The Trump administration and the first Trump administration revised the NAFTA agreement and put some new revisions that require certain amount of parts be from the United States and certain amount of assembly and components needs to be from one of these countries. Otherwise, a different type of tariffs will kick in. Okay. Now, if you go into more integration, you will have a common external trade policy by the members of the group that is part of the trade agreement, or you will have movement of people with you go into a higher level one like a common market like Mercosur, or you can go with a bigger one when you have a more economic integration like a common union in Europe, where you have a common currency, free movement of people, common external trade policy, or the ideal top one, which will be a political union similar to what we have in the United States. Now, the kicker here on this explanation that is theoretical but is actually practical is as you go along upwards or outside of this circle of economic integration, the free trade characteristics will remain. So we do have signed a free trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. But now the current administration is basically the new rules is that we broke what we signed. So because of that, then we're going to have tariffs imposed into those countries. And it's really something that will deviate countries and the global economy and the global trade that we will have. So we are pulling away from this. We're sort of decoupling from some countries, which will have consequences for global trade, politics, economics, and everything else, like we are seeing right now. There's been a movement of changing. Then we started with the origins of these tariffs. There was a reason. A part was fentanyl originally. Then it was an unfair trade. Then we went to impose something on our allies. Then we changed that. Then we went into try to create some bilateral agreements with them. Then we switched to reciprocating trade policies, which is in the phase that we are now. We just paused that for 90 days. But we're continuing to completely decouple from China. So basically, in summary, it's a tariff, something that you have to pay when a product comes in. I did mention that it could be when a product leaves from a country. So you can put actually tariffs to restrain exports as well, to basically force or incentivize local producers not to export as much. And then you put them on export tariffs. So those exist as well. We're not talking about that at the moment.
Dr. Riveras, you answered some of my second question, but just to clarify it, I just want to understand the current climate, and I want to know what is the U.S. leadership is trying to do and how the world is responding currently.
Very complex question because it has too many different angles of what is happening. Okay, it is not completely clear what the leadership is doing or why they're doing some of this. At the basic level, the explanation is that we have been treated unfairly. That being said, if you look at production and trade, you can basically divide trade into products or services. If you look at products, yes, we indeed have this balance on trade as many countries are selling their products. We're importing more from them than we're selling to them. That's on the product side. But if we look at the service side, we really have a surplus. So the problem with these arguments is that some countries, like the Prime Minister of Singapore just said a couple of days ago, he says, what if we focus on the surplus that you have on services? Singapore has a trade deficit with you, but still we got charged 10%. Should we, the rest of the world, approach this from the point of view, for example, of the surplus that you have on your export of academics? Okay, the academic world, our universities, will receive more international students than anyone else. And we are the leaders in exporting that education, which is an export. So could the rest of the countries try to ban that? So that is problematic. So the other thing that is happening with this decoupling is when you start talking about integration and levels of integration and how they go along. The second level, I mentioned on your previous question how common external trade policy is part of that a higher level of integration. But now, one thing that concerns me in terms of what is happening in the tariffs today and the leadership is that maybe we are pushing some of these other nations that were our allies to basically decouple from us and lose trust from us. An example is a recent news that so many of us have been following. The government of China, the government of Japan, our biggest allies in Asia, Japan, and the government of South Korea, they are both working together to try to create common external trade policy against the tariffs that we're imposing. So that is a problem. We have seen recently how we have changed now to that standard level of the 10%, of the 50% to 10%. And now basically we're leaving the 10% to everyone. And depending on some one-on-one agreements, we're trying to change those, but we're focusing now more in China and imposing is a tick for tack war between China and the United States. And we're last time I checked, it was like 140% tariffs. So I'm concerned also with the fact that, for example, the government of California, and I'm talking about leadership and what the ripple effect that this is having. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, start speaking about trying to get concessions directly from many of the partners that they have around the world. California being the fifth largest economy of the world, if you see it as a state, and California is trying to basically disassociate from the federal government in imposing tariffs or not tariffs and getting a special treatment for the exports that they have. So that will break with the whole theory of the economic integration, because as a country, the federal government is the one who decides on tariffs. Could the government of California or the government of Florida or Texas to start going away from that? So that is going to create some real trouble as well.
Dr. Riveras, it looks very interesting by looking at the California example and by looking at and understanding the tariffs are coming in different percentages and we are holding them and we are implementing them. So I'm looking at the ahead and I'm trying to understand where do you see the things heading in the near or the long term? Are we moving toward decoupling or is this a just temporary shift?
From what I have seen and what I've been analyzing, some of the consultants of the current administration are trying to basically break from the standard economic models that we have with global trade. Part of the theory, according to them, and let me just grab the paper that I just was checking directly. So Stephen Miran, which is a senior strategist, he came from Hudson Bay Capital, is one of the consultants of the president, produced a really interesting paper, 647 pages, where he basically presents some of the ideas that I believe are the origin of what we're seeing today. And the basics of this is that, let me do 2 or 3 bullet points. One, they consider that the current system needs to be reshaped and completely done differently. Part of the problem is the dollar is too strong. And with weakening the dollar and doing it with tariffs to complement income, they could try to solve the reasoning. The other thing that is mentioning is something that is called here agreements that will be done on a one-on-one basis. So we're trying to basically cover this into agreements that will be signed with each country, trying to devaluate ourselves, trying to devaluate the tariffs, while we're trying to sell them bonds that are probably paid at a 100-year bond. So we're going to start borrowing at a very low interest rate, create connections with these different governments, and then doing these agreements while weakening the dollar. The weakening the dollar theory, the basic theory is that if you have a weaker dollar, obviously our products are going to be cheaper. But there's so many other things that we need to consider when we're talking about a weaker dollar, because then we're saying this is not going to be the global currency anymore. If the US dollar is not the global currency, it eliminates pressure on one side, but it creates other problems at international politics and trade for the economy of the United States. There are other countries that hold a lot of debt from the United States. What could be happening with that? and all of these accords and all of these things, how that it's going to be shrinking the GDP and how much that is going to affect not only us and our economy, but others. I'd really like to go back to the principles of international trade theory. We could either be mercantilistic and protecting our markets to the extreme, and protectionism has never really worked well. And when we tried to do mercantilism in the 1930s, we created the Great Depression. But then we go to the topics of absolute advantage and competitive advantage. Can we have absolute advantage on everything that we do? We don't. I mean, it's a matter of cost of labor. If you definitely weaken the dollar and everything, it's going to be cheaper to produce here. Still, then you need to look at is in our best interest to start manufacturing things that, because of our cost of labor and the level of knowledge of our people, we should not be manufacturing. Should we go back to manufacturing fabrics, textiles, and garments? Maybe I see myself more manufacturing or designing the new AI, the new superconductors, or the new superjet airplanes or turbines. But this is basically trying to get us again to be superpower manufacturing. The key for me is whether you really want to be a superpower manufacturer in the right key sectors where we should be and gain an absolute or competitive advantage, or try to get into so many sectors that not even our workers really want to go back to certain manufacturing areas. So that's a part of the issue here.
Excellent. Dr. Riveras, I'm not sure if this is too early to ask this question, but I'm just curious, who really gains from tariffs and who takes the hit?
Who gains from tariffs? The first one who gains, what? I'm sorry, Terry.
Can you give us a real world examples, like from everyday folks to big global players and entire countries, like we can understand from every different level?
Yes, there are plenty of examples, but the first one who win with tariffs are the ones who are receiving the money from these taxes, from these tariffs, which is the government. When you impose tariffs, the one who collects that money is the government. So these solves the income of money, so they will have more money. Okay. Now the issue with this is how much tariffs you need to impose into how many products to really compensate for all the expenses that you're planning on doing. I was just checking this morning the Wall Street Journal front page on how much are we expending so far this year versus the other year, and we're far ahead on our expenses. So if we believe that only with the tariffs we're going to be able to compensate for all the extra expenses that we're having, I don't think that's going to be possible. So the first one is the government. The second one that could win are those companies that are being now protected by the tariffs that you're imposing on their competitors. If you have, and I'm going with example, steel, aluminum, okay, that's a perfect example. President Bush did it in the early 2000s. President Bush did the same. President Trump did it as well with aluminum and steel, where he imposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and many other countries, and we're doing it again. So we're doing it for the third time. So what happens is not all the steel is the same. So, and you may have a production of steel, a capacity of production in the United States that is here, but that's your capacity. But if your demand is here, then this difference will have to be compensated by imports that you will have from that steel. And if this is a special steel, not just a general type of alloy that it be generally used, you may need to use that steel, for example, for certain type of alloys in cars, for refrigerators, and many other components. What happens when you don't have enough of this, or you need to pay tariffs on this, the losers are going to be the consumers, because now that price is going to be passed on to the consumer. And the other problem is the losers on the workers. We may think and we may believe that by imposing tariffs, we are protecting the works of the steel industry. Well, not necessarily. In the two examples that I gave you when we imposed tariffs in the 2000 and 2016-17, what ended up happening is the sector on its own, the steel manufacturing sector, actually didn't win many jobs, but many other sectors lost. So if you are thinking, okay, I'm going to protect, and this is just an example, 100,000 workers on the steel manufacturing industry, I may be affecting 2 million or 3 in the refrigerator manufacturing. And so you end up at the end, when all the economists and the researchers, our colleagues in research did the numbers, actually we end up losing more jobs when we put tariffs. In the case of the first wave of tariffs on steel and aluminum, President Bush basically canceled that because he recognized that it was more harm than that. We're seeing it right now with cars. We're seeing it with cars. And the other thing that happens with losers and winners, when you ask, is let's look at the car market. The industry in the United States, or the car manufacturing industry, the auto industry, was actually saved by this integration that we have with Canada and Mexico because we became more efficient in the sense of who is going to be doing that what that can be doing it much better and a lower cost. So we're able to be more competitive against all the other players around the world. So the three big manufacturers in the United States could actually survive. So that is on one part. But then you have the other part, which is what will happen with the market? Same thing that happens with steel. So we have the car manufacturers or the steel manufacturers, aluminum manufacturers. If they put tariffs and the tariffs now put the importers at a higher price, what's going to happen is that these ones probably will turn the prices higher. So even if you're protecting them, they will try to get more money. And in the case of the automobile industry, look at how the supply and demand of used cars are going to change. The price of used cars are also going to go up, apart from the price of the cars with the tariffs, because now their competitors are going to be higher, so they will have more room for that. So big losers, consumers, buyers. Big winners, some companies in the short term. But if they don't have competition, maybe they will start feeling too comfortable and the innovation will disappear, and they will not be able to innovate in advance. Governments with some of the taxes, ultimately, then you will have to spend that money that you're receiving, you will have to spend it someplace else. Final example on this thing of tariffs, the agricultural sector. Okay, we're going into a war, and this happened again. We're going into a war with the agricultural products on tariffs. How are China is going to respond to this? They're going to stop buying some of the agricultural products that are producing in the United States on those states that are producing corn and wheat and all of that. So they will stop that. So why these people require, again, government intervention. How the government is going to intervene is with subsidies. So far, if my memory is not fading, we have so far in rescue, we had to pay around $10 to $15 billion since the new administration because of the harm that this is going to produce. And it's going to continue. If they stop buying our corn and wheat, we'll have to subsidize, because this is as a matter of security. We don't want our agricultural sector to go bankrupt. So we will have to be using some of the money that we're receiving on tariffs to pay it on subsidies to protect these people not go bankrupt.
Dr. Riveras, based on what you responded here, as a consumer, I don't see any luck. It looks like I'm in the loser side. But you said something that the government is the winner. I just want to clarify, is there a certain governments or certain countries are winning? Like, is the US as a leader company, are we winning, or who is winning? All governments, or is there any specific countries for that?
Well, the winners and losers is a whole shade with a lot of grade in between. You can say that you're winning a little war with tariffs, but ultimately, what history has demonstrated that general trade, helps everyone and help the rise from poverty. So the most affected ones could be actually the United States with this war. We might have some gains, but we're losing the trust, we're losing the alliances, and we might be self-inflicting a lot of pain along the way, because I don't see how many other countries will consider doing more agreements with us unless we basically coerce them to do certain things now. China is in a very difficult spot. 15 or maybe a little bit more other exports are coming to the United States. Could they balance that out? That 15% can be relocated into some other areas. Well, they have been dramatically changing their economic dynamics. So I think they were expecting this. They're taking the position that they're going to fight till the end, and they're going to continue the tick for tack with the tariffs. So they may be expanding to other markets. I don't know how easy it's going to be to recuperate the 15% of the United States, but it seems so far that they are comfortable trying to do that and not getting into trying to sit down and do an agreement. Hopefully, when everyone comes down, everybody start talking a little bit with one another. We start fixing some of the problems that exist. Do problems exist with imports and the trade system? Yes. Are there structural problems? Yes. Are there things that need to be better monitored by the World Trade Organization? Yes. But we should support the World Trade Organization. We should try to fix the problems that maybe the Chinese are requiring that we have 50% every time that we go into a foreign direct investment. We may need to cut the subsidies fairly for everyone or accept everyone. So there's a lot of problems. We have opted for this type of confrontation or strategy rather than going in a different direction, trying to do conversations and negotiations. So it's going to be a bumpy ride. We have seen it on the stock market lately. Ultimately, this is going to affect GDP. This is going to affect confidence. This is going to affect global trade. And there's going to be a realignment of forces.
Well, based on what you are saying, is I expect to see a lot of changes. And one thing grabbed my attention as the international business professors here. I wouldn't like to lose any reputation, trust, and the USA brand name. What I actually like the way you explain it. It looks like there's no, it's not black, it's not white, and it's not even gray. It's like you said, it's maybe 50 different type of 50 shades of gray. And to be able to understand for us and our students and our public, what would you recommend them to pay attention? Like, how can they stay informed and better understand global trade and where we are heading?
We're going to, unless we completely isolate, we're going to be, and we are the major player on business in the world. Our students, the best thing that I can tell to everyone, education is the gateway to success. You need to continue educating, and not because I'm a professor, okay? But that's something that no one can really take away from you. If you're going to compete for a job, it could be domestic or international, you're going to need to have an education. Be informed, understand what is happening, take a position, understand why these things are happening, and how can you be part of the solution. We have many students that travel abroad, they study abroad, they come back from those experiences of those internships abroad with a completely different perspective. We are global. We have to be global because we live in a globalized world. Everything that surrounds us nowadays has components, design, products, and everything from other countries. Everyone in my class, if I ask them to raise your hand and tell me what type of phone you have, I'm probably one of the few that has an Android, okay? And most of them, they have an iPhone from Apple, okay? So let's look at Apple. Apple, the core competency of Apple is research and development and sales. It's not manufacturing. They never want to enter into manufacturing. That's why they outsource the manufacturing to the places that they consider were more efficient and they can produce at a lower price. They enter with China when the last crisis happened. Then they start looking for a plan B with India. And now they have problems with everything that is happening. Are we willing, if we try to bring manufacturing back, will those students be able to pay for a $3,000 iPhone or for a pair of Nikes at $400? So that will change the dynamics of your disposable income. Now you have X amount of disposable income because this shirt or these glasses or this watch may cost it will be a lower cost because we're importing some of those components. But if everything is made here, that may not be the case. So they need to be informed. The other thing is that you may probably be working in a company that is completely exposed or partially exposed to international business. And you need to know about these trades. Most of the companies nowadays in the United States, a large percentage of their revenue comes from abroad, not from the domestic market. They have been doing successfully here, but they have somehow plateaued and saturated the market to a certain extent. So we are 330, 340 million Americans here in the United States, but there's almost 8 billion people outside that could be our consumers or buyers. So that's why we need to pay attention not only to us, but to the rest of the world. So I imagine that part of my theories is that we're going to regionalize more. We're going to create blocks in different places in different regions. And if we don't play our cards well, when we may be left out of some of these blocks. I was listening to President Sheinbaum yesterday from Mexico, who I think is having the idea of creating a free trade area for all the Hispanic countries in Latin America, from Mexico down to Argentina. I saw her talking with the president of Brazil, talking with presidents in Honduras and other places. So, what will happen if all these countries create a free trade agreement among them? So, we have the Pacific Alliance, we have Mercosur. If those two merge with Mexico, Colombia, Chile, and Peru, and they merge with the other group and they form a larger group, well, their bargaining power is going to completely change. They're going to have more bargaining power to work directly with the United States, and they will not be doing one-on-one. They will be doing it as a bloc. So those are the things that, as a strategist, that's part of what I teach, you need to be concerned. If the countries form a bloc, the same way the European Union is a bloc, we cannot have the same type of dialogue that we have with one small country, the same type of conversation or dialogue that we can have with the European Union with the economic power that they have. So we need to be smart about this.
So it looks like we are expecting interesting changes. It sounds like it's a day before tomorrow. So, Dr. Riveras, as always, it's fantastic to chat with you. It truly helps us understand the world better. Thank you for your time and your dedication to educating us and our students. Until next time, let's keep working together to create a better world.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Good to see you.
Good to see you.